welcome to the show. My name is Michael Adam Thwaite. This is Best Medicine, and I'm here with a very special guest today. Of course, in the interest of not totally botching your credentials, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself, my friend.
My name is Shannon Morris. I'm from a town no one's probably heard of, Clintonville, West Virginia. So over here in the hills. And right now I'm chief ranger, I guess you want to call me. I'm a law enforcement officer for a resort area district in Pocahontas County, West Virginia.
See, I would have gotten all of that wrong. I would have left out really important pieces of information. I'm glad I had you do that instead. How are you, man? How's your day going?
Good. Going pretty good. Yeah.
Good start. Good start. Yeah, I usually try and aim for best day ever, and then just accept whatever comes my way. So,
Yeah.
well, why don't you tell
Yeah,
us a little bit
exactly.
about yourself, and how did you get your start in the armed services first responders branch? I know you have some military history, but I'd love to hear about it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Charlottesville, Virginia. I lived there roughly 23 years of my life, on the same street, a city boy. So um, moving to West Virginia was kind of a change with the, kind of slower atmosphere and,
Yeah,
less cars and tall
life's a
buildings.
little more,
So,
life's a little bit more laid back.
yeah, and I found I've really enjoyed that as I've gotten older. So, um, I met my wife. Uh, Actually, pretty funny story because I met my first wife online, and I'd moved upstate New York, where she lived, and that was around 2002 or so, and that's what subsequently brought me to enter the military. Um, and I entered the military in Buffalo, New York.
So you
Um,
got together, and she's like, "Here's your
and
option of jobs. Go do this."
well, really, really, jobs up there, they were kind of scarce. So it was,
Mm,
I don't know, it's kind of one of those rash decisions where, like, well, I could join the military, and it didn't seem like a bad decision because of the options and the pay, the travel, and everything. And
yeah, they
um,
offer a lot.
yeah, and people told me I was kind of crazy because I had entered at the time that we had just invaded Iraq. So they were like, "Well, you know where you're going once you're
Yeah.
done with training." So, but I signed up for a 2-year tour and got stationed in Germany. And once I got sent there, I was there for a short amount of time before I deployed to Iraq in '04. And I was there in Iraq in '04 for most of the year, and came back to the States. And then I wound up, actually, I got divorced. So moved back to Virginia, and was there for about a year or so before I met my current wife, and we've been together ever since.
That's an
Um,
amazing story,
so
man. Yeah,
yeah.
life puts us together with the people that we're destined to meet sometimes.
Hmm.
So good for
Yeah,
you. I'm
definitely.
glad that I'm glad that worked out for you. So what was that transition like? I mean, not just moving state to state, and obviously, marriage and divorce withstanding. What was that transition like from civilian life to military life, and how did that 2-year tour, bring about
Mhm.
the version of you that we see today?
I think, when I got back from Iraq, it was really different because normal things that we do on a daily basis was kind of stressful for me. So, like, taking care of the house and doing dishes and things like that, because you go from being in a combat zone where you're on edge like 24/7 to being in an apartment where everything's quiet, and you got to take care of the household chores, you got to take care of bills, you got to take care of, you know, normal life, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Um, was really a hard part for me once I got back. Um, and that's part of what kind of led me to the divorce. And then when I got back to Virginia, it was kind of a fresh slate where I had to really just start over with everything.
Mm,
And finding jobs, I kind of went from job to job in supply, different, different aspects of supply, because that's what I did in the Army, which I was really good at. So, um, but in the back of my mind, I always, I served in the military. I had that mindset of I wanted to help people, but I
mhm,
just didn't know. I since I was a kid, I wanted to be a police officer, but just the opportunity never really presented itself. To where I would
mhm,
be hired on with the department. I tried a few times, but it just never worked out.
right.
So, I did like EMS and went and got my EMT, and then I realized, yeah, that's not for me. So,
Yeah.
just trying to play out the roles and see which one was a better fit. Um,
Mhm.
and then I was later in life, starting in law enforcement. Because when we moved here to West Virginia, I think I was the oldest one in my academy class. I was 30, maybe 34. So I was the pawpaw of the
I
group.
was gonna say they
Um,
must have had a
so I
nickname
got,
for you.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I was the oldest one, and but the transition, it eventually it got better. I suffered PTSD for a while, and then in '07, I got word and found out that my friend I served with in Iraq was killed. Um, so that was kind of
I'm so sorry.
that was kind of like I don't know, like a light switch kind of deal, and I know I've heard people say before, like even Vietnam vets, they have been home for 30, 40 years and had no problems, but then all of a sudden just a flashback or something
Mhm.
just triggered, those feelings and those emotions from when they were in combat. And it was kind of just unsettling for me, even though I hadn't been in touch with him, but just knowing that, they lost him, um,
Yeah.
it kind of weighed heavy on me.
Yeah.
And I eventually went into, I started some classes like for business. Um, and then once I got to my college class for accounting, I realized that I'm not a business guy. So,
Right.
so I transferred my
Sometimes,
major.
yeah. Yeah, it's that feeling where something inside just says, I'm not telling us to stay in our lane. I'm just saying maybe this isn't our lane. Maybe
Yeah.
move to a different lane. Yeah, no, I imagine that was really
Yeah.
challenging. Is it part of the at-home reintegration program? Is that something that they offer? Like, is there a guidance counselor or an educations counselor, or as you mentioned, is there someone that sort of, was, helpful or impactful in any way to sort of help you pivot and try new things,
Uh, I think we had like a reintegration meeting or whatever you call it. We had to go through once we got back to Germany, and I mean, really, that at that time, I mean, you're talking about 2005. So I mean, that's quite a bit of a time ago, and I know things have changed since, but they just really go down a checklist of things that they ask you, and it's like yes or no, and most guys they just be like no, no, no,
hmm
and ones that actually, if we did have issues, we didn't really voice it.
Right.
If we had someone we served with that we kind of trust, we confide in and kind of talk to them about about things we feel or whatever. Because it was kind of um, everyone was kind of reluctant to talk to talk to a psychologist or a counselor or someone,
Would you say
you know,
there's
in
a
that
big
capacity.
stigma in the military
Yeah, back then
about
it
talking to
was.
psychologists?
Yeah, and just talking to some of my friends that are still in, like, even reserves or National Guard, there's still, that stigma there today that, guys are like, well, I don't, they're worried about it affecting their role in the
Mhm.
military, and
Yeah.
kind of scared to say anything about what they're feeling, and it's different because
Would you say that they're definitely going to get treated differently as soon as people know, like whether or not they checked a box, whether or not they asked to speak to a staff psychologist or someone, if they just said, I'm done feeling this way, I'm going to start actioning all of these plans, like do you think they would be, viewed as incapable of serving by peers?
Yeah, I think that, and we even see that today in our first responder roles, that there's that stigma there, that um, and the military thing then was that, it's a sign of weakness that you say, hey, I'm feeling depressed. You say that word, it's kind of like, whoa,
Yeah.
and people kind of look at you differently. But like I was going to say, going from Charlottesville, Virginia, this, it's not a major city, but it's a bigger size city. Living there my entire life, and being with my family and all, and the only, I guess, real traumatic events that you see would be on the TV, and then you go from there to being airlifted into Baghdad, and you've got guys shooting missiles over the fence, at the airport, trying to kill you, and mortars coming in and being shot into our camp, and things like that. And it's like uh, that's a wake up call, because you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is real,
I
and
imagine it feels like being on a different planet.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
So
totally different place. Yeah.
how did you start the process of, obviously first, in order to care for yourself, right? I always kind of, look at care like a like an acronym, and I break it down. Obviously, you had gone through the contemplation after making, the choice and military service, and I salute you, by the way, for wearing the uniform. Thank you for your sacrifices. It sounds like you've got a lot of, hard stories to carry, and I acknowledge that. I just wonder, what was the contemplation that led to the action to then really, get yourself towards, reflecting and educating yourself. Like you made a great transition after this difficult period. What is it about being a first responder that attracted you to, ultimately making that pivot?
I always, like I said, I always wanted to be a police officer. It just, you know, it wasn't in my timing. I always say, kind of like my wife says, it's in God's time, and you can't make it happen yourself. So He has a plan, and if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It may not be when we want it, but
Hmm.
um, so, and after I transferred my major to criminal justice, I looked into corrections, and I was like, well, maybe this is a way to kind of get in and get some experience and use my some of my college experience with a career, working for the state. And I did that for about 3 years, and became a supervisor. And one of my guys left the jail when I was working there, and went to work for a municipal police department nearby. And he worked there for a little bit, and then he up and left and went to the sheriff's office. And he told me, he said, hey, this department's hiring. They have an opening, and if you're interested, go talk to the chief. So I went
That
and
sounds
spoke
like a
to
solid
him,
brother. That's a
and
great suggestion.
yeah, and I went and talked to him. I said, well, hey, let's try and see what happens. And he offered me the job, and I went in starting out at $10 an hour, and as a police officer, and that got my foot in the door, got me to attend the state police academy, and where I became certified as a law enforcement officer, and that got me where I wanted to be, and I don't really see myself really doing anything else. Because I couldn't really see myself in any other position, because this is something I love, and um, I believe it. We're helping people, and like I said, it was God's time, and so I didn't make it
Yeah.
happen, but eventually,
Yeah.
you know, He let it happen. So, and that's where we're at
Yeah.
today.
Oh, I absolutely stand by the knowledge that the powers that surround us, the powers that create us, the powers that infuse us with, the magic of existence. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not about the words at all. I mean, growing up,
Right.
you would hear a lot about, spirituality and religion, in my house, and, obviously in the houses of my friends. And there is
Hmm.
something to be said about surrendering to that knowledge that you are here on this planet, on this earth, and there's something divine about you. And if we can, in our efforts to just be here as humans, if we can relinquish a little bit of that, what we envision as control, when we just relinquish
Hmm.
that to, the powers, so much greater than ourselves. Timing, and life happens, the way, it's intended to, and life brings us to family. You started building a
Yeah.
family with your
Exactly.
with your lovely wife. That's tremendous. What was that like? You're coming into your
Mhm.
own. You're coming into new boots, and then love.
Mhm. Yeah. And meeting her, has really been the best thing that's ever happened to me. And, um, that's kind of shaped me into who I am today. And all of the things that we've been through, and the people that have come into our life, I believe have done so for a reason. And,
Mhm.
um, through, we've been married over 15 years now. So,
Wow.
um, and,
Congratulations. That's a tremendous
yeah.
accomplishment you should be proud of.
Yeah, no, we had, our first child, before we actually moved to West Virginia. So she was born in Virginia, and we moved here probably about 6 months later, in 2010. And, uh, she's 14 now, going on 20. Um, but,
Right?
but,
Isn't that the way of it
in,
though? Like, they're in such a hurry, but bless them, because
yeah.
they are biology in totality. They're not guests at all.
Mhm.
They kind of know what they want to do, and yeah, no, they're awesome. She's
Yeah.
tremendous, by the way. So I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
hers. I'm a fan of yours.
Yeah. And I mean, she's really, I mean, I have her to thank for, for us meeting, um, and
Me
making
too.
this connection now. And, and it's been amazing. And, it means a lot to me, because, you mean a lot to her. And, just what, uh, Ninjago, and what the show has done for her through
Thank
her
you.
law. Uh,
Yeah,
um,
she's been through a lot as well. She's a
yeah.
warrior in her own right. So yeah, yeah, you got a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
Some of
Thank
the
you.
things that have happened for the family, I wouldn't wish on anyone, and I say that with all the love in the
Yeah.
world, because I acknowledge your struggle, I acknowledge your strife. How did
Yeah.
everything come about?
Um, when we found out we were pregnant, for our second child, we had some tests done, and then that's when they found that, we were having a girl, and that she had trisomy 13. So, we were kind of like not really. knowing what to expect, and
Yeah.
had got
What
referred.
is that even? Yeah.
Yeah, and the trisomies, like trisomy 18, I think it's basically when um, the person has an extra chromosome, and trisomy 18 is Down syndrome, and trisomy 13 is kind of like when um, your body is not really communicating with your brain. So like normal functions that we have, um, from what they told us, is that the body cannot sustain life,
Mm,
and there's no, the child would have to be on a ventilator, and there's no real um, determination of how long they would live if they were born.
yeah.
And through statistics, so many kids have died before birth, and some died during birth, some died, you know, a day later, some lived for 15 years or more. And so it just kind of not knowing what to expect. And we've been referred around, uh, to a bigger hospital, and got some excellent care there at Charleston Women and Children's Hospital. And then we were referred to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and went there, and we're kind of just waiting to, go through the pregnancy, and then, get to birth, and then kind of take it from there. And they kind of
Hmm.
walked us through what to expect, um, and what would happen, when she was born, that she would go on a ventilator, and, how that would affect her and things. And, um, she had damage to one of her lungs. So, I mean, that would have had to have been repaired. So there were things that, there
Hmm.
were, other health concerns as well. And we were right in the heart of COVID. So that was even, uh,
Yeah.
a tougher thing, because, when she was born, the family was not allowed to come in and see her. So, um, me and my wife, we were the only ones allowed in. So, I mean, uh, Tara and me were there, but Isabella was never able to meet her, or anyone
Oh
else
yeah.
in the family. And um, and it was hard on Isabella, because we're at the hospital, with her sister, and she's
Yeah.
without us. So, I mean, there's that kind of separation, and that kind of loss per se,
Yeah.
at the same time. So, but she was doing better. Victoria was doing better in the hospital, and they had taken her off one ventilator and put her on, I guess, like a, the one she was on was kind of a high powered ventilator.
Hmm.
So she had gotten to the point where they put her on a lower one that was kind of, showing us that she was making some signs of improvement.
Hmm.
And then it was probably about 2 or 3 days later is when she was going to have surgery on her lung. And, that would have been traumatic in itself, because they would have
Yeah.
had to have cracked her stomach open, in an infant. I mean, that's
That's a lot
major.
for a grown human,
And
let alone an infant fresh to the world. Yeah, that must have been
yeah,
incredibly uh terrible time for all of you. I can't imagine what that must have been like. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Wow.
yeah. And we
So
uh,
the
we took
days that
Isabella to a
followed,
park.
yeah, the days that followed must have been equally challenging, bittersweet. I'm sure. But you ended up with more days than you had probably imagined you would get.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we didn't know what to expect. And after she was born, we kind of set aside time that, we would be at the hospital with Victoria, and we would also have time with Isabella. And we were in Blue Ash, Ohio, at one of our favorite spots with a park, and had taken Isabella there to play and kind of hang out, and get some fresh air. And
Just be a
we were
kid.
on there. Yeah, just be a kid, and we were on our way back to the hospital, and while we were at the traffic light to turn onto the road, where the hospital was at, my phone rang, and it was the hospital, and they told us that she was coding, and that they were trying to get her back, and um, we rushed to the hospital, and um, I always said, I dropped Tara off, and she ran upstairs, and I had Isabella in the car with me, and I knew she wasn't going to be able to come up. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to take her back to the apartment that we had rented, while we were staying there. And she'd be there for grandma. And as I was driving away, I just heard this voice that said, go back. And I just turned around. I remember Isabella asked me, what are you doing? And I said, we're going
Mm-hmm.
back. Like she knew she wasn't allowed to come up. And at that point, I didn't really care.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of went inside and wound up running around trying to find someone to try to figure out what was going on upstairs, because Tara was up there with the nurses and with Victoria, and finally the social worker winds up coming down, and she says, come with me, and me and Isabella go with her. And like as soon as she said that, I knew she was gone, because I was like, they wouldn't let her up regardless.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I remember someone there for the COVID screening kind of said, "Hey, sir, you have to be, screened in." And I was like, I yelled at him, and I was like, my daughter's coding, and they were like, "No, he's fine." So, and we walked up, and they kind of took us back to where Tara was at, and she was sitting there in a rocking chair with Victoria, and we kind of knew what was happening, but 17 days doesn't seem like a lot to someone,
Mm.
but to us, I mean, we were truly blessed to have that 17 days, um,
Yeah.
and it could have been a lot less, but we've been very thankful, and faith's kind of brought us through a lot, and as I've said, if it can bring us through that, it can bring us through anything. So,
Yes, sir. 100%. I I apologize. I am very I I I don't know. Yeah, I you've obviously had a long time to process this, and for for me hearing this story, you know directly from you for the first time. It just breaks my heart. But like you said, it was a full life by the measures that her body could allow. And the fact that
hmm
Victoria was there with you for those 17 days is just, it's so beautiful, and it's so bittersweet. And I thank you for sharing that, because I know that there are people who need to hear stories like
yeah,
this, because there are millions of ways to feel alone. And for anyone who's ever
mm,
lost a child or had a child that was ill, like those days in the hospital, those hours with your child, those hours away from other family members, other children, it's like
yeah,
it is the ultimate, bittersweet sacrifice. And I just yeah, I love you, man. I love your
yeah.
whole
Thank
family.
you.
I wish you well
Love
every
you
single
too.
day. And yeah, I can't imagine what that last day, was like. And obviously that's a very private jewel for you and your family. But yeah, like you said, you guys moved in the right direction, one step at a time.
Mhm.
I'm glad to know that you had so many people reach out to you, and get in touch with you, and sort of
Yeah,
in a lot of ways just break through this period together. That must have been really transformational, although terrifying, and hard.
Yeah, I'd never anticipated ever having to go through something like that, but at the same time, just being able to share her story and talk to people about her, it keeps her living on,
Hmm.
and just how her short period of time here on Earth impacted so many people. With such a small little person and people that had never even met her. She still impacted them, and um, ever since I've shared her story with a lot of people, and I've had people come up to me in confidence and say, "Hey, I just wanted to appreciate, for you to know how much I appreciate, you sharing her story." And that, like, I had a few people, they were like, "Well, me and my wife just lost our baby a few days ago," or whatever. And,
Uh,
just knowing that, and it's like that my story, even what they've been through, but my story could help them,
mm.
um, and kind of give them some hope and um, some direction or whatnot. Because everybody asked us, they were like, "Why aren't you mad at God and everything?" We're like, God
That's a
saved her.
pretty
And
bold
so,
question.
you know, yeah,
That's
yeah,
a very,
mm,
yeah, wow. I don't know that I would have behaved as well as you if someone had asked me that in that vulnerable time and space.
yeah,
I think I maybe would have lessened myself to at least definitely emotional violence. You are you're quite the specimen of mankind, sir. I appreciate you.
thank you.
Faith, though, yeah.
Hmm.
So sharing your story and sharing Victoria's life has taken you to quite a few places as not only as a here we are, all of us earthbound humans, enjoying the fruits of life and obviously the challenges, but as you say, she's still alive, and in your
Hmm.
story and in your your sacrifice of time and your energy. And I just wonder, like, obviously when you started sharing her story, it was more than bittersweet. It must have tasted like ash in your mouth to talk about it. But this
Hmm.
time that has passed and the amount of times that you've shared it, I can only imagine it gets a little easier. But how do
Yeah.
you find that the impact on others, how does that reverberate forward and out and back? Like what is it that you think that people are going through, that we all just sort of we can huddle around this idea that a small life, a short life, can still be so impactful, and yet all of us are all out here fully formed, like like worrying about everything,
Hmm.
but this one little life. I mean, it's tremendous. Tell me about the people that have grown around this story. Your friends, your circle, everybody. I'm sure I'm sure there's something that hopefully you'd be okay sharing.
Yeah, we had our close circle, of friends, and really quite a bit of people that came into our life, because of Victoria. And everything from, you know we had the funeral director. He had lost his son, and I mean, just everything that he did, for the services and for everything. I mean, he treated Victoria like she was his own. And I mean, it was just, we were just blown away at how many people came forward, and all the people that, kind of opened up and banded together. And I mean, everything from selling bracelets that, had victory for Victoria because that was their theme. Um,
Mm,
we they were selling bracelets to raise money to help us with, like gas money or um, food at the hospital or whatever. People from our 911 center, they mailed care packages to the apartment for Isabella.
wow.
Um, because she was basically stuck there, all day till we got there. And um, like I said, it was during COVID time, so I mean, really not much for her to do. So that's why that time that we were able to get her out of there and go to the park or whatever was, um, it was just her time to be a kid, like you said.
Yeah.
And um, even years later, just people that I still meet and share the story, or they were there, you know, during um, the services and after. We're still close friends, um, and then one tragedy leads to another, and at the time once I came back, I had a short amount of time, to grieve, and then I was back at work, and I went into the schools as a pro officer in one of the middle schools here in my county, and I felt at the time that was a good decision to make, and um, a way to really kind of like, I mean, even within those walls, sharing that story about Victoria um, and being able to help other kids, and even having a grief group for kids that had lost parents, and we kind of just
Wow.
met and would share stories or do an activity or something, or just come together. Even if it was only two kids, we were still reaching them and impacting them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, and then about 3 years later, so last year in 2023, um, we lost our lieutenant and my friend to suicide, and um, he was one of the ones that he was a military vet, and he I would go to him and talk to him about Victoria and about things that I felt, and if I was in a dark place, that he was one I could talk to, and then now
Mm,
he's gone, so it's kind of like um,
yeah.
ever since then I'm like putting all my time and effort into helping other first responders, and
Yeah. Absolutely.
looking at statistics since then.
Hmm.
Only that I know of, we've lost four first responders in our state to suicide since last year. So,
Wow.
that's
That's
that's way too many.
that's way too many. I was trying to find a way
Mhm.
to say that without sounding anything other than frustrated with
Mhm.
with that statistic, but you said it. I echo that. That's four is way too many. And I know
Yeah.
that there are some pretty difficult stats to absorb. I know, like, going
Mhm.
through what an individual goes through, that's one thing to consider, but the ripple of loss is so insurmountable. Like, you actually cannot do the math on what losing
Yeah.
one person can be like, just like you can't do the math on what saving two kids is like, because those two
Mhm.
kids, they have support, they have a system that serves their needs and looks after them and takes care of them, and they have people like you, and then before they know it, it hurts a little less, and it hurts a little less,
Mhm.
and life, hopefully blossoms, and they discover that joy that I think we're all, it's our birthright to feel joy. And while it also feels like a terrible thing to say, it feels like, suffering might also be part of this birthright. But the fact that you're doing what you're doing and that you're doing it still is an incredible honor and a service to Victoria's memory, and it's a massive, massive impact out there, in the world, especially you focusing on first responders, best medicine. We focus on first responders. I've got radio check at the ready. Most days I'm sending friends messages, and it's just my little commitment to try. It's not a commitment
Right.
to perfection. No one's perfect, but if I can radio check my buddy and he's a paramedic, or if I can radio check my friend who's in the arts,
Mhm.
who I haven't heard from in months or years, even if I radio check him 6 times, hey man, radio check, how you doing? I just send it out. Even if I never get a response, and I mean, this isn't a call out to people. I'm not, being, difficult or challenging. I'm just saying you don't have to radio check me back. All I want you to do is hear me reaching out to you. I'm holding down that button and I'm saying, hey man, come
Mhm.
back. And
Right.
I wish for you that so many people um would have, I think made the decision to stay, but I also know how selfish it is for me to say that, because when you can't, you just can't.
Mm.
And that's something that unfortunately we can't take back. But you are carrying a flag for all of them. And again, I feel like I've said it too many times, but I love you and I salute you. And man, you're doing great. You really are, because I don't want to lose
Thank
anybody
you.
else. I know you don't want to lose anybody else, and we're
Right.
still losing people, which is
Yeah.
which is difficult. But what do you see as something that could be implemented right away into the armed services branches of the military, the armed services branch of the government, any of this systematic stuff? What do you think we could do right away that would have an impact?
Hmm. I don't know. I've thought about that a lot because, like I said, with the military today, and guys that I've talked to, they have the VA system, and they're like, well, if you need to reach out, you need to go to the VA, and I know a few of my friends are kind of frustrated with that system and kind of what they're offering. And I said, well, if you're not getting what you need, from that system, then reach out to someone in the community. I think there's a approach when it comes to mental health. I know, at least within our state, that we're slacking, on services for mental health, and within that whole realm of mental health, you have to look at it from a counseling standpoint, a spiritual standpoint,
Hmm.
a wellness standpoint, where you're kind of factoring in everything from health and wellness, like working out, having spiritual guidance,
Hmm.
as well as someone that's like a counselor that's certified to, that you can talk to, and there's different
Yeah.
facets of that, that
Sounds like
have to
we
all
need a
come
we need
together.
an all-in-one body shop.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, help some of those miles come off a little easier. I bet.
Hmm.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, I also have to ask, because this is something that I want to always, offer everyone the opportunity to speak on. New life after tragedy. You
Mm.
have a beautiful son.
Yeah, thank you.
Man, oh man. Again, your courage, all of you, your bravery and your, selflessness. I don't know what else to say. You are a great family, and he's just, he's such a little light. I see it in the
Hmm.
pictures. Man, oh man, yeah, new dad again.
Yeah,
I love that feeling.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of glad Isabella's that age, because that's a ready-made babysitter. So, but
I'm not gonna deny it. I'm not gonna deny it. Yeah,
yeah.
it works. Yeah.
But it's pretty amazing because we when we found out we were pregnant with him, we didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl. And, I was like, the streak that I have, it's always been girls. So,
Hmm.
um, when we found out it was a boy, it was kind of like, okay, what do we do? Because
This is all new.
we've had girls and this is all new, and everybody's like, oh, boys are great, boys are easy. And, you know, um, and then one day Tara was sitting there and was going through some of her pictures, and I had actually sent you one of those pictures last night. And she had, you know, given that this was a ultrasound pic from Victoria. So, a few, 4 years ago, as opposed to now, in 2022 when Connor was born, and she had taken a picture. So she was kind of going back in the old pictures, and she looked at one of the ultrasound pics, and she was like, "This picture, it looks like there's two faces in it." Um,
Yeah.
so she took that picture and compared it to one of Connor, where he had like his mouth open, like he was kind of excited, and that picture of him looked exactly like that image in that
Wow.
ultrasound. And it was kind of like, to us, it was God sending a message saying, you know, I know you've suffered a loss, but you know, this is what I gave you.
Mm,
Kind of like back then, if we had seen it, we really
mm.
wouldn't have known anything. We would have just saw that and been like, oh, it's maybe
Yeah, you wouldn't have known
artifacts or
about
something.
the future existence of a soul twin.
Yeah,
That's beautiful
yeah.
and
So,
powerful and very inspiring as well, because it's so easy to you sidestep into anger, especially with
mhm,
our beliefs and our system of beliefs. And you know um I've grown to feel like it's not about the words, like it's not about printed words on paper. It's not about books. It's not about wood and timber and
mm,
steel and concrete. It's not about the building at all. It's about the people.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, definitely.
I can't tell you how happy I am for you all, that you have that special connection and that special story, and to know that Connor was there with Victoria, and
Mm,
then came through to y'all is yeah, that's powerful stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I have this
mhm.
disease where my bladder is built really close to my eyes, and it just sort of like, my mom, she always said, we have, like, we we just cry a lot. So,
Mm.
um yeah, man, I can't
There's
tell you
nothing wrong
how
with that, dude.
no, thank you. I know there's nothing wrong with it, but
Yeah,
old habits die hard. And when
yeah,
you grow up in the time that we grew up in, it's in itself, it is something that needs to be shed also, much like the
mhm,
tears themselves. We need to shed the idea that crying is not okay, because it is. And as men,
yeah,
in the world, whether you were born a man, whether you identify as a man, there's a lot of things going on when you look outside the window. And a
mm,
lot of those things I see these days, yeah, they make me want to cry, and I don't say it
yeah,
with any hesitation. But I smile while I cry, because I know that there's people out there like you that exist. And I know that it sounds like a very Hallmark card thing to say, but if you can pick out all the things that are bad in your day, why
mhm,
couldn't you change that energy and pick out all the things that are good in it? And if
mhm.
the world
Yeah,
truly is
definitely.
as large as it's always been, well, imagine if we all put our energy into the pot that says, I'm going to look for the good, I'm going to be the good, I'm going to feel the good, I'm going to share the good, talk about the good. Imagine what our little ball of magic in space would look like if we all just
Yeah, exactly.
cried a little more and tried a little more.
Yeah, I
I
totally
want to ask you,
believe that. Mhm.
sorry, say again. You broke up a little bit.
Oh, I said I totally believe that because I try to stay positive all the time, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But changing your mindset when you have a negative thought or something like that just kind of impacts you so much by just reversing that and thinking positive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about it, and I'm sure, you've either heard of it or you've seen it. I'm gonna throw some love out to Inside Out 2 right now.
Mm.
Animated film. I'm sure, I'm hoping you're familiar.
Oh yeah.
I picture that scene where anxiety grabs the wheel and anxiety's at the
Hmm.
console, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm gonna cry a lot during this, and I did. Obviously, I bawled like a baby. But it's in our nature to need to grab the wheel sometimes, and there's that
Hmm.
shake it off kind of feeling, and being able to make that choice. It really is like, I'm sorry, I have to kick myself out of the seat because this
Hmm.
feeling or this emotion, this like compounded time and memories and pain, it just like, I
Right.
I can't trust this. I got to put this over here, and I have to take the
Hmm.
wheel differently. But you know it's a testament to your commitment to being here, to your family, to your community. And I just got to say, if there's one last thing I could ask, and I ask this, of friends and guests alike, assuming that technology persists and that 1,000 years from now, our descendants can look back through technology and see anything they want to see, what would you want them to discover about you and the Morris family?
Mm. Wow, that's a good question. I think just how I'm always looking and seeing that there is still, you know, some things that I do see gives me hope in humanity and just the people that come into our path. And we have people in our family that cross our paths for a short period of time, and kind of like they say, that person just comes to leave footprints, on
Mm,
their way through life, um, or ones that have been close friends forever. And that you don't really have to strive to have tons of friends, because just having a few really good friends, I kind of look at it from, having all the money in the world and that you're so rich, but I'm rich in other ways. Um,
yeah.
and I feel that we can measure our richness and our wealth and the people that are in our life, and the friendships and what they can offer. Um, so I think if that makes sense.
It does, because now I guess all we have to do is envision that 1,000 years from now, people look back on the Morris family. Hopefully, they find this interview and they get to hear you say it for yourself. That's
Mm,
beautiful, man. Thank you so much. I can't tell you what it means to me to have met you, especially in this very unconventional way. I have a very unique and perhaps singular privilege, as a voice actor. I get to reach out and interact with fans, and
mm,
I have to say, until I met you this way, it never really occurred to me that there were parents of Ninjago fans. I always just sort
mm,
of, and so delightfully silly of me and very, naive, but there are parents who choose to share Ninjago with their kids by allowing them to
mm,
watch it. And I don't know that I've ever gotten a chance to say thank you to all the parents, because
mhm,
you've made a choice that has directly impacted my life. Because in a lot of ways, without the show, not only are there no stories and no trials, no
mm,
tribulations, no challenges, no successes, no victories, but there wouldn't be a career for some people. So I'm feeling all of the interconnectedness feels and all of the gratitude, and I just want to say thank you And if you're out there watching, and if you're a Ninjago parent as well, this I'm thanking you also, because
Hmm.
knowing how difficult things have been for Isabella and for you and for Tara, and knowing that you could at least in this one tiny way know that she was, you know, engaged in something that, made her feel better, like that is power. And that is the power of
Hmm.
storytelling, and not necessarily the power of Ninjago, but yes, also. I'm not
Yeah.
it's not a plug. I'm just saying I'm really grateful that I got a chance to meet you, and I'm grateful for the show for doing that. And
Yeah.
you are a fine example of what it means to pick up whatever's left and keep moving, and multiply it
Mhm.
with care and kindness, and that pursuit of love and understanding and compassion. You are yeah, you are one of the top shelf people, sir. So I don't know if you can take that to the bank, but richness over wealth, I'm with you on that also.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank
Anything
you.
anything you'd like to leave us with? Anything you'd like to share?
I just, like I said, how grateful, I am for you and for the show, because, during those hard times for us, with Isabella, the show was what was there for her and her go to, and how, she'll ask me all the time. She's like, "Well, ask me trivia questions and all this stuff," and I can't come up with hardly anything, but she can sit there and spout off, you know, what actor does what voice and what season they were wearing these outfits, and uh, what villain was in this season, and who was in a relationship with who, and I mean just everything. And it's just, she
Uh,
amazes me with that, and just how much the show's had an impact on her, um, and been such a positive thing for her, and and how it's kind of created this relationship, and getting to meet you, her favorite voice actor, and so I mean, it's just, to me, it's amazing. So
well, I mean, I might be your favorite now, but I mean, wait till she gets more homework. She might start thinking, this
yeah,
guy is no good. Giving me homework. What do you mean I
yeah,
gotta try and write stuff down? What's this about? Well, I tell you what, my friend, I can't say again how wonderful it's been to have you here. Best Medicine thanks you. I thank you. Ian
yeah. Thank you for
thanks
having me.
you. And yeah, I just look forward to just keeping the line tight, and checking in, and
Yep.
we'd love to have you back on the show in the future. Maybe there could be an update episode with a
Mm,
check in.
okay.
That would be awesome, because I know everyone's gonna want to love to stay in touch, and keep up on all the news with the Morris family, West
Yeah,
Virginia.
definitely.
Thank you so much for being our first neighbor south of the border guest. I appreciate you for taking the time. All right,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you for having me. Really
Have a great
appreciate
rest
it,
of your
Michael.
day. I appreciate you too, brother. All the
You too.
best, and have a good one. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
You too.